All right, and we are live. What is up, everybody? I am Adrian M. Gibson, your host for this fine evening. We're here to celebrate our friend Herman's new release, The Bartender Between Worlds. So let's give a round of applause for our dear
Woo,
friend on that new book.
woo, woo.
But I'm just going to go around and introduce everybody.
Thank you so
You're
much.
all watching on Fanfiatics, so you probably know who I am. Adrian M. Gibson, host of SFF Addicts, author of Mushroom Blues, the Mushroom Guy. As most people have probably associated me with
The fun
by
guy.
now. The fun guy. So fun.
That's right.
But I'll go around. I'll let everyone introduce themselves. Herman, man of the hour, go for it.
Yeah, so I am Herman Steuernagel. I am the author of The Bartender Between Worlds, which just came out today, which I'm sure we're going to be talking all about. It's my 10th published novel. I'm also the host of the greatest podcast in the multiverse, which is where I think I have met all of these lovely individuals this evening. So I'm happy that they're joining us here today as well.
Yeah, man. And Zach?
Yeah, I'm Zach or ZS Diamanti. I'm the award-winning author of Stone and Sky. It's back here. I've got one right here somewhere. Look, I've always got some on the desk somewhere around. But
you have the most colorful spines. I love it.
Dude, yeah, they're like a rainbow. But fantasy author of Stone and Sky and part of the Break-Ins. And Herman has been a hero of mine, and I got to meet Herman last year in real life, in
That's
real
right.
person,
RL.
back in Vegas. That was awesome. So,
right on. This is fighting words, John. We're gonna have to talk about this a little bit. If it had to be the best in the multiverse, because the best in this universe is Brian Lee Durfee. SFF Addicts also disagrees. Last up, we got Steven.
Yes, I'm Steven. I go by S.L. Rowland. Recently, I am probably best known for my cozy fantasy, Cursed Cocktails, and Sword and Thistle, which you can pick up these special editions on Kickstarter for about a week and a half. And Sinister Troll, this is the one that really got me started. I'll be releasing the 6th book and final book in this one next month, actually.
Nice, man. Congrats.
nice.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, let's roll into it. Since we're celebrating The Bartender Between Worlds, Herman, if you want to tell us a little bit about the book, but also what got you started. Because before this, you've written post-apocalyptic fiction. You've written kind of like dystopian stuff, space opera with Eclipse and its sequels.
Yeah.
Where did you end up going like, well, I'm just going to veer off in this direction and write some cozy fantasy because fuck everything else.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's funny. So the Bartender Between Worlds, I guess, to answer your first question, like you said, cozy fantasy. The premise of the story is Emma, who is the main character on the cover there, is a witch hunter and discovers that she has magic all of a sudden. So she has to make a decision, and she decides that she is going to run away and pursue her lifelong dream of becoming a bartender, which is handy because her magic only affects drinks. So it's a cozy fantasy, lots of found family, lots of cozy vibes. It's a fun little adventure story, and I had a lot of fun writing it. So this is my 10th novel. All of my novels up until this point were varying degrees of dystopia, post-apocalyptic, and whatnot. And really what happened was... I was kind of tired after writing my last book. So
Every good story starts with, well, really what happened was.
So October, November, I published Chimera and Resurgence, which are book 2 and 3 in my Fractured Orbit series, which is a space-based dystopian story. And I pushed hard to get that 3rd book out in November. And I was really burnt out and I just needed a break. So I had this idea of kind of this multiverse tavern, which really started into a separate story, which I'm actually going to be publishing later on. But I kind of came to this story because I realized I'd written 9 sci-fi stories and I had no audience for cozy fantasy. So I wrote this intending it to be a reader magnet. It was going to be a quick novella that I was just going to put out there. But some of the characters ended up taking on a life of their own. So it turned into a novel, and the rest kind of went from there. And I really decided it deserved its own launch. It deserved its own marketing. It deserved its own Kickstarter because it really was a cool story in and of itself. It really wasn't the reader magnet idea that I initially started out with. So when I started out with this idea, it wasn't gonna be a cozy fantasy. It started off like I had this action adventure idea. It was, and it just as I was writing, I'm like, no, this is low stakes. This needs to be comforting. This needs to be fun. It's what I needed to write, and I think a lot of readers need that sort of story right now as well. So that's kind of the evolution of how this happened.
That's good though. I'm glad that you turned a really overwhelming situation, such as releasing 2 books in 2 months, because you're just a madman.
It was nuts.
And turning that into something positive.
Yeah. Did I talk to you about that in Vegas, Zach, when we were there? Because I hit publish in the airport. I was uploading the manuscript in the airport on my way to Vegas because it was like the deadline to upload to Amazon.
Yeah.
It was. So Chimera and Resurgence were supposed to be 1 book, and it ended up being 900 pages. So I had to split it. And in my infinite wisdom, I thought, I'm just going to publish them back to back, October to November, because I had them both written. But the process of splitting them and the process of kind of finishing up the story up, it really ended up taking a lot more than I realized. And yeah, so I was down to the wire when it came out in November. So yeah, it was stressful.
Yeah.
I remember you were like, yeah, I just hit publish, and like at the airport. I was like, what?
Yeah.
Dude, what are you doing here?
Yeah, it was wild. So,
I would be so stressed just using like public Wi-Fi to be like, I'm gonna upload this manuscript and I don't know if it's gonna work, because sometimes KDP takes
from
a little
airport Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
No, it's like upload the manuscript and upload like the cover art, and I would just be like, oh no, like what if this internet just craps out on me?
Yeah, I'm sure I used a hotspot because I was doing that quite a bit. Because I don't trust the airport Wi-Fi to begin with. So yeah.
Well, man, I'm glad that you ventured down this path. You got this book out, and I think a lot of people, because I've seen cozy fantasy get really big in the last little while. And Steven, I'll get your take on this too, but like, especially with just how batshit things are in the real world right now, like especially like Zach and Steven, you guys live in the States. What a week, right? Like I was joking with our friend Nicholas Fuller, who's also in the break-ins and sort of like booktuber podcaster, and I was saying kind of jokingly, but like I live in Ecuador and we've had a really politically fraught year, and I was like, I'm sorry that we passed the baton to you guys. You know, like things have calmed down here a little bit, but we just tossed that baton up to the US, and shit's gone a little
wild, right?
We're just getting started.
Just getting started.
Yeah, it's just
and this is the beginning of your cycle too, right? So
this is like in the middle, but it's like it's ramping up to November. But I feel like people can really benefit from cozy fantasy stories, or stories that are a little bit more easy to digest and bring you a little positivity and
more
like
slice of life and smile. Yeah.
I don't know, Steven, what has your take been on that with like writing Cursed Cocktails and all that stuff?
Oh man, I mean, I love cozy fantasy. I read Legends and Lattes, and then it just kind of sparked an idea in my mind, and I was like, I've got a story to tell. It was meant as just like a passion project, and like when I released it, like it became one of my best sellers, and like I've just jumped down the whole cozy fantasy like rabbit hole. But I think it's like everyone like wants to feel comforted and like cozy, and like everything's going to be okay. And I feel like when you read those books, that's what you get. Like starting out that everything's going to be all right in the end, no matter what they have to go through. And the things that they have to go through aren't going to be that bad. They're just going to stress you out.
Yeah, it's like the what was the tagline for Legends and Lattes? Like low stakes,
high fantasy.
High fantasy.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like that low stakes vibe actually, it helps a lot to kind of like give the reader a really solid expectation up front about what they're getting into. And like Herman, how was it for you writing cozy fantasy after, dude, like some heavy genres for a while, and kind of like getting your mindset into, because I can't even imagine putting my head, my writer brain into that like low stakes kind of vibe.
it was, you know, it was honestly tough. And so, you know, in some places it was easy. It was nice to kind of just have fun with the characters. But in some place, my instinct was to up the stakes. I'm like, oh, and then they're going to destroy the village. And well, no, wait, no, they can't. Like, I'm not going to even have them threaten to do that. It's going to be just, no, let's take it back and realize, you know, okay, this isn't that story. Like, I mean, the prologue starts off with, I mean, they're just finished hunting, you know, these magical monster creatures, and there's hints of their past in there that I kind of tie into this bigger world. But to really scale back the stakes was actually, yeah, it was tough in a lot of places, because I just written, especially coming off of Resurgence, which is super high stakes, especially at the end. It ends on a pretty dark note, and then to try to rein in the that element was a little difficult for me, for sure.
But it's like, it's such a balance, because I would be like you, where you're like, all right, how am I gonna like abuse my character more in this given circumstance in like a really fucked up sadistic way?
Yeah, right. Yeah, and it was really the opposite of that, where I'm having characters try to comfort and guide each other and work with each other's, you know, in really work with their, I'm missing the word here, but with the trouble that they're having anyway, their insecurities. That's the word I was trying to find. With their insecurities, and help them work through it, really. And that was the main point of the characters, and why the book ended up being longer than I originally intended it to be, because these characters really had to work together to find that, and that's not something I've had to do in my previous books.
But at least it's like the characters spoke to you in such a way where they're like, I want more. Give me more.
They absolutely did.
Yeah. It's like, work with my emotions, Herman. Come on.
Better than not having enough, right? And then you're like, well, that didn't go where I wanted it to go.
Exactly. I just want to shout out some of the people that are in the chat. We got Beard of Darkness. Hello, my friend. John A. Douglas. We mentioned him earlier.
Nice. I talked to Matt the other day. So good to see you here too.
Great. Yeah.
And we got Love and Lore. We got Daniel Coolball from Fantasy and Sci-Fi Fanatics podcast. We got John.
Hey, Daniel.
Very, very happy that everyone's here.
Yeah,
happy
wonderful.
Herman's getting his due. I've been looking forward to this for weeks.
Thanks, Daniel.
Thanks for being here, Daniel.
Yes.
Okay, something I wanted to talk about, because all three of you, I haven't done one yet, but Kickstarter. Zach, you and I, we've had like Kickstarter bounce around the Break-Ins Discord quite a lot. Yeah. Steven, you mentioned that your 2 books are available on Kickstarter. Herman, you did a Kickstarter of like a special edition in preparation for the launch of this book.
Yeah.
So I want to get all your takes on Kickstarter, like whoever wants to go first. Just like what that experience is like, or why you decided to do it. That's like such a big question.
Maybe we pass that. I feel like we got to pass it off to Steven, because like when I was going to do my first one, I was asking Steven all sorts of questions. I was like, bro,
was he your mentor?
What did you do? And what did you?
Nice.
Yeah, he definitely hooked me up with ideas. And then I remember Herman asking me, and I was like passing on stuff Steven had told me. So let's give it to the wise wizard over here.
And Steven's got a Kickstarter running right now. So definitely, if people open another tab and check that out.
Definitely do it.
So this is my second Kickstarter. My first one was almost about a year ago today. And so what I do is like I do special editions, but they're kind of like bootstrapped special editions where I take the original hardcover from Amazon. I design, I get an artist to do a new cover art for the dust jacket. I find local printers, I find artists, and like I make vellum inserts. Like I make all these cool things to go into like a book box for the special edition, and I only release it on Kickstarter, and then after that's over, I sell it through my TikTok shop.
Nice.
And so like those are the only place you get it. So they're pretty like exclusive, and like by the fact that every book that goes out, I'm putting together myself. Like you can't find it in the store or anything. But so like my first one I did, I think I raised about 10,000 over the course of 3 weeks, and now on my second one, I have the option to get both books if you missed out on the last one. And I'm already at 11,000. I think I still have like 12 days to go. So it's definitely, I started out with it because I just wanted to learn the platform, because I saw a lot of other authors having a lot of success with it. And it's very different from how you market on any other platform. I feel like people want the cool stuff. They don't mind spending money for the cool stuff. So you want to give them the cool stuff.
Totally.
I feel like the market these days, especially for special editions, is like ridiculously huge compared to even like 3 years ago. You know?
Oh, definitely. I think the whole Brandon Sanderson, launching his books on there brought a lot of people to the platform. And like the hardest part
a lot
is
of readers
getting someone onto a platform. And once they've been on it once, they're more inclined to come back.
Totally.
Yeah, I mean, like the majority of Kickstarter backers usually have backed multiple projects.
Totally.
In which case it's like, they're like return customers in the ecosystem, which obviously someone like Brandon Sanderson really brought a lot of attention to Kickstarter as a viable place for authors to do DIY, basically like special editions or book releases and that kind of thing.
Yeah, totally agree on that. Yeah, I got to do, for me, it was one of those things where logistically, like hardcovers didn't make a whole lot of sense for me to do signed hardcovers at the house. We do signed paperbacks, so you could see them. I mean, I got another shelf over there where it's got all sorts of other paperback stuff and all the box stuff, the fun stuff that we put in for the signed paperbacks. But logistically, it didn't make a lot of sense for us to do like hardcovers at the house. And because then we had to have different size boxes, then we had to have hardcovers on hand, and hardcovers are more expensive to get outright. So it was like,
and
man,
this
doesn't make sense.
It's so heavy.
It's so heavy. And so, for us, like during the Kickstarter, it was really cool because it was like, hey, you do a Kickstarter, you get a certain number of backers, how many backers you have. That's how many hardcovers you got to order. Now you don't have to have overstock. So it was a really cool opportunity to do something kind of special like that.
Because Zach, you did the same thing as Steven. Like, obviously, you were saying he helped you out with a lot of stuff, but like you got a local printer to print the dust jackets, right? Yes,
and I'm so glad. And Steven gave me his price, like from his local printer, so I was able to go to my local printers and be like, my buddy's able to get it for this much. So they're like, all right, we could do this much. And I was like, oh, thank you. So
no, but it's good, man. It's like
give me some leverage. It was great.
Yeah. Especially when you know, especially when you know, like, hey, I'm gonna order like this quantity. I'm not pissing around. Like, it's not gonna be like, give me a discount on a single item. It's like, no, I'm gonna order hundreds.
Yeah, right.
It was like, look, I'm gonna have to order probably 150 of each of these, and there's 4 books, and I'm gonna need. You're gonna get paid, bro. So like, are we gonna work something out here? And so I went through a couple of printers, and I finally landed with one that actually was like, yeah, okay, we'll get close to that. And I was like, okay, we can work with that.
That's cool. How did the quality turn out though?
Oh man, local print it's amazing. It was pretty great too, because I was able to like go pick up a test print and like test it on the books and be able to make some adjustments right then and there, and not have to like have them ship it to me, and hopefully everything turns out right. And then
process of working with Ingram Spark.
Oh gosh,
there's so much guesswork involved. It sucks.
Totally, yeah.
Herman, what about you? Like, how did it go?
Yeah,
with the bartender?
I'll grab this here because I've got this. This is the proof copy. It's not the final product, but
yeah, dude,
I got
you did gold foil.
Gold foil.
That's more complicated.
You know what? It wasn't too bad. So this cover, I designed myself. I went into this Kickstarter with like zero expectations, no idea what to expect. I'd seen a lot of friends of mine do quite well on their Kickstarters, and I'm like, you know what, maybe I'll be able to fund some of the editing and cover design costs and whatnot. So I pulled this together myself. I did a couple of runs. I got my wife involved to do some illustrations because she's an artist. I'm just trying to find one here. So like I printed them in color in the special edition. The black and white ones are in the market edition, but there'll be extra ones in here too. Yeah. I got that printed through Book Vault for the gold foil, and it looks way better than I'd hoped it would with that. I mean, it looks incredible. So yeah. I went the special edition route as well. I wanted to do something special for my 10th book, and that seemed to be the way to go. And yeah, it absolutely blew any expectation I had out of the water. Like I don't know what it translated to American dollars, but Canadian, it was like $30,000 was the Kickstarter run for my first Kickstarter. I think it was,
So it's
Awesome.
probably like 20 to 23,000
something
US.
like that. Yeah. So I mean, like close to 400 backers. And yeah, so I was able to fund an audiobook through the process. I was able to fund everything that I had done for this book and fund the cover for the next book and a bit more than that. So yeah, I mean, to say I'm happy with it, I think it's an understatement.
Yeah.
And that was a cool comment there, actually, that you put up there from Kyle.
Yeah,
It said,
Kyle.
Awesome.
I'm excited to see
Kickstarters.
3 of the authors I've supported their Kickstarter. And that's
Thanks,
just
Kyle.
awesome, man.
That's amazing.
And
Yeah.
I think that goes back to like exactly what we were talking about, how like when people are there, they're like, yeah, I like buying books there. I've gotten myself into a little trouble where I keep getting everybody's book. I saw Stevens the other day and I was like, oh, I better go get that. And I was like,
Your wife
wait,
is just
what?
like, God.
When
damn
is it?
son."
I was like, when does it end? The first. Okay, start doing the mental math, right?
Yeah.
but no, it's true. Once people are there and they're comfortable with getting books there, and there's exciting and cool things to get, I mean, it's awesome.
Yeah. And the one, I mean, I was worried that being in Canada, like the shipping was going to be a barrier to people buying the book. So I
'Cause
really had
even
no
shipping
idea.
within Canada is a bit
It's-
expensive.
You know what?
Yeah.
It's more expensive for me to ship something to Ontario than
Canada
it
than
is
to the
it is
US.
to the US. Like it's
Yeah.
so
Isn't that
ridiculous.
wild?
So
Yeah.
Just wild, dude.
yeah, like I mean, it's definitely been an obstacle to my website sales. I haven't sold a whole lot of physical copies on my website because of the. I'm assuming because of the shipping, but yeah. So I had no idea what to expect. So that people were willing to pay for a special edition plus the shipping to get it to them, I think was. I mean, it was a real surprise for me. So.
Okay, all right, but don't lie. You're totally gonna load up all the boxes in a van and drive across the border for media mail shipping,
You're so
right?
close.
You're so close, bro.
I was gonna do that. I definitely,
Yeah.
I was prepared to do that, but I found a company out of Surrey, which is like a 3-hour drive for me.
Yeah.
That I don't have to cross the border to do it. They'll give me access to
Cool.
media mail, so
Oh,
I do
that's
have that
awesome.
option. Because I was like, okay, what if they stop me at customs and like I have 400
sure.
books in my
Who's
trunk?
this dude hawking like hundreds
like-
of books?
They think he's
Right?
like
'Cause
peddling
I'll have to
books
pay,
somewhere.
'cause I'll have
Like,
to pay a customs fee for that too, right? So I'm like, okay, do I
Yeah,
get them?
that's true.
Do I get them shipped to
Yeah.
a shipping station just across the border, and then go and
Yeah.
sign in the back of my car for all day, and then ship them out there? Like, so no. But I found this company, Stallion Express, and they're gonna hook me up. So I'm super happy about
Cool.
Right on.
about finding that because
that's great.
yeah, I mean, like because I was expecting to send out 20 to 50 books. I wasn't expecting to send out 400 of them. Like that's just
Yeah.
wild. So yeah. So but definitely I definitely had that thought. I'm like, because I'm an hour from the border, so it wouldn't have been that
Right.
a big of a stretch for me to do that. So I definitely had that thought.
That's like the one thing that's stopping me from doing Kickstarters is the fact that I live in Ecuador, and I'm like,
Yeah.
it's impossible. Like,
So-
I talk to friends like JDL Rosell, and like
Yep.
he's like showing me pictures of these pallets that arrive at his
Yeah.
house, and I'm like, that is just like a physical impossibility for me, and it just
Yeah.
bums me out so much.
So, but you
Yeah.
could do it and drop ship it, couldn't you? Like you could ship. You just wouldn't be able to do signed editions. That's the only thing that you
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to do.
Yeah.
You could get it shipped from the printer to the.
yeah,
to the
but the whole
backer.
but signing it is like that personalization
kinda-
aspect.
Yeah, it
part
is.
of
Like when
the
I sign
deal.
stuff, I love to just like draw a little shit in there. Like,
Yeah, I
like,
mean, you
I'll
could
just,
do
like,
book
draw-
plates, but it's not the same.
Yeah, it's not the
yeah.
same.
Well,
Like on Mushroom Blues, like I always draw like a little mushy in there and stuff like that, and like sign it. I can't not give someone that.
Yeah,
extra.
you'll just have to time it so that when you come back to it, you do a print run when you come back to.
Be like,
Canada.
Mom, Dad, I'm gonna ship like 400 books to your house or whatever.
Exactly.
They'll just be like, what
there's
the hell?
a company, I think they're called Merrick Books, but they do a lot of the special editions for like Defiance of the Fall and Legends and Lattes, things like that.
Yeah.
And like they will work with you for like a percentage of however the Kickstarter does. And I know they can ship out the pages for you to sign them, and you just ship them back to them.
Yeah, the broken binding does the same thing. Well, they'll send you like tip-in pages, and then you just sign that and then send it back. But who runs Merrick Books?
AJ
Riddle. Riddle. It's Riddle. Yeah, AC Riddle.
AC Riddle. Yeah.
Because
it took me a second. I was like, wait, I know who it is.
Because Mike and Robin Sullivan were telling me about Merrick Books as well when MJ and I chatted with them on SFF Addicts. But yeah, I think like Kickstarter is such a fascinating world, but I think it's so good because, especially as indie authors, we're so bound by the mega corporations, especially Amazon, in order to make this viable. Like, to make self-publishing viable, there's so much reliance on Amazon, Ingram Spark, these big corporations, and the bigger they get, the less flexibility they have for self-publishers. So I think it's good that something like Kickstarter is available, or even just being able to work with Merrick Books or other companies that run Kickstarters, or to work with book printers that put out really good quality, and you're able to provide like, hey, here's a book that is like comparable in quality to whatever you're going to find in Barnes and Noble or whatever.
Yeah. I'd have to, like, what I got from Book Vault is way better quality than what I got from Ingram. Like, I did do a proof. I wasn't going to do the gold foil initially, but I was so disappointed with what I got back from Ingram that I'm like, no, I've got to do something better. And so I got a gold foil proof rushed to me from their UK printer. But nice. I mean, and it was, to ship that to me wasn't going to be any more than to ship a regular copy from Ingram. And I mean, the quality is just so much better.
And with the gold foil, it stands out so much more as a special edition.
Definitely.
Yeah. Man, one day, I will burden my parents with. I'll burden their garage with this.
Yeah.
Herman, I wanna get your take on podcasting, because we met through Greatest Podcast in the Multiverse. I mean, we've been talking a little bit before Mushroom Blues came out, but then you helped out for the book tour.
Mm-hmm. And well, you were talking to me long before that, Adrian.
That was the first time that we
talked to each other. Yes, that's right.
But I wanted to get your take on how podcasting how your journey's come along, and like how that has fed back into your writing. Because for me, like, SFF Addicts has changed how I view writing as a career, but also like my relationships with other writers and the things that I'm learning.
So I started the Greatest Podcast in the Multiverse pretty much exactly a year ago now. It's been an interesting ride. I didn't really know what I was getting myself into when I started, but I mean, there's been some difficult times doing it too. Like, it takes a lot. It's a lot of work. It's an absolute lot of work. But what keeps me going is, I mean, meeting people like the three people here, and so many other authors that I've met that I've become friends with through the podcast. Like, that's been the most amazing thing. And I mean, the insights that they provide into writing absolutely has played a huge impact. Like, so the last couple of months, I mean, I've set out to interview cozy fantasy authors because I want to know more about their takes, and I want to know more about why they started writing cozy, because a lot of them have a similar story. Like, I mean, Steven, like, you were writing lit RPG and you moved into cozy fantasy. I was talking to Marshall Moore, who was writing high stakes adventure, and he moved into cozy fantasy, and everyone just kind of
you just released one today, like today or yesterday, I think, with another cozy fantasy author, right?
Rebecca Thorne. So she was on the podcast too. Yeah, and she had other genres that she'd written in other genres first as well. Like a number of them. And everyone's just kind of had a similar theme, that they needed something a little nicer to write.
Not the masochistic stuff that we usually just like force ourselves into.
So I mean, the journey of podcasting has been really a lot of fun. Like, really just meeting other authors, getting to know them, and being able to get their insights, but also having another community to talk to and reach out to. And promote. Like I really love promoting other authors, and it's given me an avenue to do that. So
I'm gonna throw some comments up. This
Yeah,
one's
please
for you,
do.
Stephen.
Appreciate
Just
it.
a gigantic
Amazing
ego
genius
just
slash
a
human.
genius.
ego boost.
Love it.
Okay, who else we got? Yeah, Zach, you're huge stacks.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
And
those
John,
are-
his
those
first
get
ever
crazy.
Kickstarter was Stone in the Sky.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, John.
Herman, this one's for you. Is there a particular place where John can leave reviews to help spread the word?
I mean, Amazon's always helpful. Definitely gets a boost doing there. You can leave a review on Goodreads. Anywhere that'll let you leave a review, I guess. You can leave a review there. But Amazon and Goodreads are the two that I usually point people to.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, John.
John's
But
a
yeah.
review hero, man. You got
Thank you.
John's great.
But yeah, Herman, I think like podcasting is, because Zach and Steven, I want to get your takes on being on the other end, because it was really weird for me to switch from being the interviewer to being the interviewee. Like my first interview, thankfully, I did it with friends, with Hannah and Laura over at On Wednesdays We Read. But I was like,
It's
shit,
very
I'm
different.
actually nervous. Like I was
Yeah.
nervous, more nervous for that than I was like interviewing Jim Butcher or like Christopher Paolini. And I'm just like, shit,
I believe it.
What's happening here?
Yeah, I had that. I had the same. I'll let them talk in a bit, but I just want to say I had the same experience because I started doing being an interviewee, and then I started doing my own podcast, thinking, what the heck am I doing? And then when I came back now a year later and started to be on other people's shows, I felt the same thing. Like, oh, I'm nervous. I do this every week, but I'm feeling nervous talking to people. Like you're not used to talking about yourself when you're the podcast host because you're just showing up and asking questions really. And just like you're learning more about the other person, but when the focus is on you, it's quite a bit different. And I think, like Zach and Steven, you were kind of like two opposite ends of the spectrum of podcast guests, and that Zach was like super eager to talk to me whenever he can, and Steven, I had to twist his arm a little bit to get him on the show. So.
Yeah, I actively go out of my way to not be on podcasts.
Active avoider.
I think I've done like
Well, thanks
three.
for breaking your rule and being here.
Yeah, I've done like 3 in my 7 years as an author. It's just like I hate being the center of attention because like whenever like I feel like it's being focused on me, like I focus more on like what the person's saying than like my answer, and then I start talking, and then I'm like focusing on what I'm saying, and I forget what the question was, and I'm just like talking, but I don't know why I started talking. And it's
Happens to everybody though. Yeah.
But then he asked me, and I turned him down, and then he asked me again, and I was going to turn him down again, but then I saw Zach was on it, so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do
a spite interview. Take that, Zach.
Then I saw Zach was on it, and then I was like, "Oh, if that knucklehead can do it, I can do it too." Right?
It ended up being a good time.
Absolutely. No, and I mean, like, it was absolutely great having you on too. And like you were a great guest. I mean, to whatever your fears and insecurities about being a guest were, like, I really enjoyed our conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good time. I think it's important to like step outside of your comfort zone every now and then.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
Look at that. No excuses now. You're a genius and a great guest. I mean, you're a hero, bro.
He's a full package.
Right?
Yeah,
Zach's
he's
so
a full
jealous.
package.
Zach's
Now
like,
you
suck
gotta
it, I
say
got my
yes
shelves.
every time.
man. Deal with
Yeah, that's right. I got my stinking shelves. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but
No.
you know what? And so, like, Zach, I don't think I've seen anyone on more podcasts than you, Zach. Like, when I was looking for, like, because I like to, like, search for interviews for guests I have on, and when I looked for, and there's like I think you've been on 300 different shows I've never even heard of before. I think they have one episode and it's you.
I'm kind of the opposite. Anybody's like, "Hey, you want to do an interview with us?" I don't know what time. Careful, you're gonna scare Steven. He's gonna be like, "He's on how many?" Now he's gonna have to go on all those ones. Just just to match up, right? No.
I've turned down so many people.
Maybe I got to be meaner and I got to start saying no to everybody. So I'm
No,
not
Zach,
that
you don't have to
single
be
episode.
mean. You just have to play hard to get.
I don't know. When do you want it? Well, I mean, I don't know. Let's see. What's
Is that your hard? Is that your hard to get?
I don't know. It's not very hard to get, is
Just
it?
like swish your non-existent locks.
Whatever. I mean, whatever. Nothing going on. Oh man. No, I'm kind of opposite. It's like, somebody asks and I'm like, sure, what's up? What do you got going on? Whatever. If I can make it happen in the schedule, I'll make it happen. Let's have fun. You guys all know me at this point. I'm all about having fun and having a good time and smiling and laughing and chatting it up and hopefully bringing some more positivity and light into people's lives, And so, even if it is a small podcast and they reach out to me, I usually try to make it happen if I can, just because, hey, everybody's got to start somewhere too. And it's not like, Matt, Beard of Darkness, right? He was the first one to reach out to me and be like, I want to do an interview with you. And I was like, sure. Nobody else wants me. So I'm in. What do we got? Right. So, and he was the first one to bring me on and do an interview. And we had such a great time. And, I'm very introverted, but I know how to talk to people because I moved every other year of my life. So it was like, you don't have friends if you don't learn how to talk to people. It was weird. Right. So when Matt had me on, we were having a great old time. And then he was like, dude, you got to get on Twitter. And I was like, why? I thought Twitter was dead. Right. And Matt's like, no, bro, that's where like everybody's at to connect. And I was like, are you sure? Like, that doesn't sound right. My Twitter's
like
been
Twitter
dead
and
for like,
Instagram.
I was like, mine's been dead for like 7 years. Like, I don't even know what you're talking about. He's
Wait,
like,
when was
no.
this? Can you give a time frame for this?
Yeah. So I got on Twitter, like for real on Twitter. I think it was back in October.
What?
Yeah.
That's so recent.
I know. So
Holy shit.
I only really started tweeting in like October. I just hit 1,000 the other day, which was super cool. I'm hitting the 1,000 in like lots of different places all at once, like Threads and Twitter and YouTube. Just like this morning, I was like, what is happening? This is great. But it was funny because I was like, back then when he told me that, I had like 10 people on there. So like I said, it was dead. And sure enough, I got on there and he's like, oh, have you talked to this guy? Blah, blah, blah. It started connecting me up and I started connecting up with all these different people. And then everybody was like, oh, I've seen your book around. You want to be on the show? And I was like, all right, sure, let's go. It kind of steamrolled and I was just kind of on everybody's show there for a while. And then it was like, I have a release coming out. Does anybody actually want to like help me? Can I be on anybody's show? And so I got to do a few repeats, which was really, really, really fun. And then a couple of new ones. And then some of them have been like, not even like connections through, Twitter or anything, but like, so I actually have a page on my website where people can like invite me to come and be on their show. And that's where I've gotten like Draft to Digital and Pro Writing Aid reached out to me. That's how some of those guys reached out to me, because some of the more like big companies that have their podcasts, that's kind of how they hit me up through the website and that page, which was really kind of cool. So, yeah.
That is cool.
I'm not necessarily afraid to go, so I just go. I'm like, sure. What are we talking about?
No, but it's good, man. It's like I feel like I'm quite similar in that it's kind of like you're an extroverted introvert in that you have like, I don't know, I'm thinking about it in like a video game sense where you have like some sort of meter for like extroversion. And you can be like, I'm doing a podcast for an hour and it's slowly draining. And then after you get off the podcast, you're like, all right, it's like, I'm just going to chill out and like speak to another like living creature. Yeah. And then, after a couple of days, your meter fills up again and it's
back to go. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You can expel the extroverted energy, but you go and recharge by yourself. That's how I
definitely. Yeah. I'm the same way for sure.
Go like cut some grass and get some hearts and stuff. And then you're like back to normal. But like when I did my book tour for Mushroom Blues, there were so many people who were like, how the fuck are you alive? Like, because I just stacked that tour with so much stuff.
It's unreal, the list you had. I saved that list too. I'm like, this is a good list of people to reach out to.
Yeah,
So.
no. I've sent that to people. They're like, who should I talk to for my book tour? And I just like send them my graphic, and I'm like, take your pick. Like,
Definitely
try
use
all,
that.
you know.
Yeah.
Reach out. Yeah.
But the thing is, like, I managed to stack the recordings in such a way where I never had more than like 2 things in a row, in the sense that I never had like 2 things on one day. I usually had them spaced out by like at minimum 2 to 3 days. So I was like, okay, I can manage this. It's totally fine. And I started back in like January, and then like worked up through February and into March. And, you know, behind the scenes, I was super chill, you know, just like getting everything ready for launch. And people are like, are you alive? And I'm like, yeah, I'm good, man.
I'm good.
I mean, but
just by myself,
start,
doing my thing.
Yeah, like you started super early too, like way ahead of schedule. And I think that's the key, because then you get to pre-record episodes, which I think podcasters like. I mean, I like to pre-record anyway, but then you get the live ones interspersed in, and it looks like you're doing 3 in a week, but really you just did one, and you did one 2 months ago. You know, it just, then everything starts to roll out at once, and it looks like you're just absolutely everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like I'm just you know, got my fingers in everything. I guess in the kind of sense of mushrooms, I got my like mycelium and everything. But yeah, my little tendrils.
That's right. That's right.
But yeah, I think like you know, like I'm really happy to see more authors taking approaches to things like book tours, things like Kickstarters. There's just like way more avenues these days than ever to promote a book. And what's really cool is actually seeing traditional authors start to like take examples from indie and start to pull that in. Like I've been helping out my friend R. Verdi with his book tour. You know,
my
like,
episode with him comes out next week, actually.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So like, thank you again, Herman, for having him as part of that tour. But like,
it was that was a great conversation. So like, if people want to check that one out next week, absolutely. And I know Daniel, who's if he's still around, had him on as well.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not sure if that episode's out yet or not, but yeah.
I think it's coming out soon. Daniel was actually the first one to record with Rowland.
Okay. Yeah. Cool.
But the cool thing is like, okay, yes, traditional publishers have their big marketing departments. And mostly those marketing departments aren't marketing to readers. Those marketing departments are marketing to booksellers. And what I've started to see is more traditional authors taking the lens of virtual book tours and understanding that that is the direct connection that you can make with readers. Where yes, your publisher can do X, Y, and Z on the bookseller front, on the distribution front, whatever. But what we've had to learn as indie authors is that like the hustle is entirely in our hands, and we don't necessarily have the connections or the reach to be able to get the books into the hands of booksellers. Not often anyways. It's very, very rare case.
Yeah.
So it's cool to see like our hustle of virtual book tours and connecting directly to readers. Traditional authors are starting to pick up on that. And seeking out ways to do more direct to reader connections. So I'm like, like, let's get more of this shit. You know?
Right. And that's, I mean, that is a big reason I started the podcast, was that I could to give indie authors an audience, right, and give them that reach, because it really is. I mean, it's a tough. I mean, as you all know, it's tough getting the word out. You know, a lot of times of you know, that. It's just trying to get eyes on your books, right? So the more avenues you have, the better, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. Kyle said Travis Baldry. Travis, I actually spoke to him about it. It wasn't even about connections. It was just that employees. I'm going to talk about like a really ridiculous loophole, because America. In Canada, I was able to get my book into Indigo Chapters Coles, is like this conglomerate of bookstores in Canada, because I, through blogging friends, was introduced to basically like a consignment buyer, the person who buys books and orders them into the store in Southern Ontario. And so what she was able to do is input my book into the system in such a way where it could be ordered into stores.
Right.
Barnes & Noble is not that easy, because America, even though America's like all about express, all about like making things as easy and consumable as possible. For some reason, Barnes and Noble is just the most arbitrary, ridiculous company ever. So Travis, what he had to do was he became sort of like a sensation in terms of social media, in terms of like people were talking about his book on TikTok or on Instagram. People that worked at Barnes and Nobles, different locations, they wanted to promote his book, but it wasn't being purchased by consignment buyers at the company. So what ended up happening is people who worked at Barnes and Noble, if they ordered the book in as if they were themselves buying it, got it delivered, returned it, then it is automatically added into the inventory of that local store. So different people working at different Barnes and Noble did that, got the book on the shelves, and then recommended it to readers, which is just absolutely stupid, but it also really helped his book get into a lot of people's hands.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and from my understanding too, because I've heard Travis talk about that, is that once it was in their system as being bought, then other stores started buying it because they saw that this inventory was moving, right? Yeah.
Right.
So it's so arbitrary.
Do you guys have your books in Barnes and Nobles down there at all? Like, can you walk into a Barnes and Noble in your hometown and get it?
Mine was there for a little bit, but I don't think they restocked it once it sold out. I know I'm in a lot of like indie bookstores, because people always tag me in social media, but I guess they order them through Ingram Spark.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, I don't have some indie bookstores, no Barnes and Noble right now. Kind of working on that over the next year, but it's not like high priority project at this point. Honestly, I am doing some with Indigo in Canada though,
like in store. Because man, like I got
it's easier. It's so much easier.
And that's saying something too, because like I got my first book into the Kelowna Indigo because I mean it's close to where I live, but even to get it into the Coles in Penticton where I actually live, it's been a struggle. Like it's just a lot of effort for a small amount of return. So I haven't put a lot of effort into it either. Because I mean to see my book on the store shelf in Indigo was amazing. Like it's like super cool. This is like bucket list thing. But then after that, it's like, okay, but I could just run some Facebook ads, and that seems like a lot less effort than trying to get this book into the store. Because I'd be happy. I want to get my book in all like through the distribution network just so they're stocking it on their shelves in the system. I don't want to have to like call up each store and be like, hey, can you get my book in? Exactly. This, so that
one by one sales is tough, man.
Yeah, right, but isn't it more worth it at that point to do one by one sales to readers as opposed to to the booksellers?
Exactly.
Like at this point,
exactly. I'd rather do readers.
Yeah, I'm realizing how much more vital it is to be like, if I can capture one reader as opposed to capture one stubborn ass bookseller who's like more stubborn than S.L. Rowland, like that, like they play fucking hard to get, and it's just it's. Is it worth it for the ROI, like the return on investment as well? Right. Like if they order a book into their store, how much do you earn? Versus if I'm able to sell one reader on this book, they'll buy an ebook, they'll buy a paperback or a hardcover, or they might contribute to your Kickstarter or something like that. That feels more valuable.
Exactly. Or like if I can go on a podcast and speak to, even if it's not a large podcast, and I'm speaking to 50 or 100 readers, that to me is way more worth that effort than calling up a bookstore and trying to convince them to bring my book in this week.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I did an interview with Balding, who are Mike Molman and I can't remember Rose's last name, but they have a YouTube channel. During the interview, just in the live chat, I was seeing people, and there were like a couple people that dropped in. They were like huge mushroom fans, and so I was like interacting directly with them about mushrooms and like how I've incorporated them into the book, and then they're dropping mushroom facts in the chat. And then I looked at my Amazon sales immediately after, and it was like it ticked up by 2.
That's awesome.
So it's like that kind of thing is really meaningful when you can see the directness of that interaction and how that contributes to your book spreading out.
Sure. Well, and these live chats are great too, because I see Kimberly, I see Daniel, Kyle, and Joe's here. Hi, Joe. Like all these people
Joe
showing
Byrne, how
up
you doing, buddy?
just to hang out with us, and that's a really cool feeling as well. Like Kimberly is part of the Rebel Author Group, which I'm a part of, and she has been a guest on the show as well. She'll be on again in August, and Daniel and I are always chatting, so I'm not surprised he's here, because I think he'd be chatting with me anyway, even if he didn't show up. But if
Pepperoni Blues.
Pepperoni Blues.
I love it.
Like it.
Kyle's asking, do you all do local bookstore signings in your hometowns? Just curious.
I've tried, but I haven't been. Well, so I should qualify this by saying my first few books came out when COVID hit, so I couldn't get into stores. And then when Eclipse came out, Chapters got hit by that ransomware attack. I don't maybe didn't hear about that in the US, but they got hit by this big ransomware attack. So and it was the week that Eclipse came out, so I wasn't able to get into there. So I kind of just stopped trying, to be honest. That's the only bookstore that's close to me. There's an indie one in Kelowna as well, but I haven't made a huge effort to get into there for various reasons. But yeah, so no. This is the short answer to the very long story I just told.
There are like 2 English bookstores in Quito, and I've been talking to them about like maybe doing something. One of them's called Confederate Books, which I'm like, that's a very unfortunate name. But then again, like that has a different connotation in Ecuador than it does in, say, the United States. Right. It's still, but I'm doing my first author signing at Worldcon in Glasgow, which I'm really excited about.
And that's awesome. That's so awesome.
So,
yeah. Local, I don't do a whole lot of local. It's usually when I go to conferences. Like I've got Author Nation this year, where I'll be speaking, and they've got like their big rave reader party, like celebration at the end of the week. So I'll be doing.
I thought you were going to end it like they've got this big rave, and I was like, oh.
Yeah, this big rave. It's just like the lights going on, and I'm in there with my markers and stuff.
You got glow-in-the-dark markers?
No. I've got some other conferences and stuff, and conventions are great. As far as I just feel like I get a lot. I've done a couple of local signings, like in the Denver area and stuff, but I feel like you don't get to see as many people, generally speaking, if you do like a local store, whereas if you go to like a conference or a convention or something, you kind of get to see a whole bunch of different people and interact with a whole bunch of different readers. So those tend to be more worth it because you just get the more interaction. I did one author signing with like a group of authors, and it was like 3 hours at like this local bookshop, and we had maybe 10 people come through like the whole 3 hours that we were there. And of the like 4 or 5 authors that were there, I was the only one that sold the book and like got to sign one. And so everybody else was like jealous. And I was like, it was one book, guys. Like, let's go to.
It's not much to be jealous about.
Like, let's go. Like, it's not that big of a deal. So that's just generally been my experience. I don't know about you, Steve.
I've done a few signings like here and there, more conventions than like dedicated signings, but I think I prefer for signed books like TikTok. It's so much easier because then you just sign them and take a whole stack of books to the post office. And the worst part about like going to book signings and conventions is having to carry around everything that you're hoping to sell, and then you don't sell half of it, so you have to carry it all the way back.
Yeah. I did a book signing in Vegas as well at the 20 Books conference there. Not last year, but the year. I didn't do it last year. I did it the year before. But I mean, I had a suitcase just full of books, as many books as I could fit without going over the weight limit. And yeah, that was not a fun trip through the airport.
Yeah, I've been trying to figure out like how many books do I order for Worldcon.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
But at the very least, like I've been very lucky that in terms of like ordering stuff, I was able to order everything to the broken binding.
Cool.
And then they're gonna have like a table vendor table at the convention. So they were just like, yeah, we'll just load up your books on our pallet and then we'll meet you up there. And I was like,
Awesome.
that sounds
Yeah.
That's awesome.
brilliant.
Yeah.
But then it's like, if I don't sell anything, then I'll just have to bring that back. But I'm like, yeah, whatever, it's fine. I didn't order tons and tons and tons, but
that's when you go back to the Confederate bookstore and sell them all there.
Yeah. Be like, here, signed copies. Let's do like a reading or something. But it's so hard to judge this kind of stuff because like I guess it depends on each author and like how they value certain types of interactions. But I think like meeting people in person is really, really nice, especially if you can talk to them about the book and kind of like gauge their interest in that very intimate environment. But at the same time, it is really cool to be just to see like someone on Twitter say like, hey, I bought your book, or someone in like a live chat saying like, I'm gonna get this kind of thing. But yeah, man.
Steven, do you sell a lot on your do you sell the signed copies on your website like I do as well, or just TikTok? Because obviously we both do that
just
one.
TikTok and through Patreon. I haven't gotten through the whole website shop yet.
How exactly are you selling them on TikTok though? Is there like a mechanism for selling things on TikTok?
Yeah, there's a TikTok shop.
Yeah, it's all regional. So like if you're in the US, you can only do it in the US.
Right.
And I don't think every region has them. I know the UK does.
Canada doesn't. I haven't been able to do it here.
Canada usually gets excluded from stuff like that at the beginning.
Apparently there's a workaround through Shopify that I have to look into a little bit more, but up until now I haven't been able to access the TikTok shop.
Yeah, but I mean, even without like having access to the shop, like if you get good traction on TikTok, you know, you can send them to like your Patreon, to Amazon, to wherever, and like you definitely see books moving.
Oh yeah, before TikTok Shop even came out, it was like I was using a button in my bio that was like, here, you can get signed copies from the website, right?
Yeah,
so
and that's what I do, and
totally,
I seem to get a fair amount of traffic, at least to Amazon, not to my page yet, but yeah, it's fine.
But that's kind of like the thing that annoys me about all the different social media platforms is like, how can you basically take advantage of all this click-through bullshit? Like, which click-through is like the most effective? I find Twitter is probably like the most difficult to have like an effective click-through kind of thing. Whereas
even
like Instagram,
posts, right?
Yeah, like Instagram, you can just like drop a story and have like a thing right there. Like the profile links in something like Instagram or TikTok are way more efficient. Whereas like Twitter, I feel like you have to spam a little bit more in order to get like more.
Yeah, you've got to have the comment below, or Twitter won't show your post to anybody, right? If you put a link in the actual post. Facebook's the same way, right? You've got to put the link in a comment below to like work around the system, which is just, it's so
goobery.
Yeah, like
I still do it because I just don't give a shit. Because it's like I'd rather have people like, if you see this post, the link is right there. Like
all 7 of you who are going to see this, it's right here. Like,
no, but actually, I haven't been like that. Like my posts haven't been like strangled in that much.
Good.
In that
sense, that's good.
Like usually it'll get like 1 to 2K depending on like views depending on what it is. But then like I don't know. I don't really know how the algorithm works in that sense. But
see, and I find, I mean, my Twitter posts get pushed into the void unless I mean, I sometimes I'm like, why am I tweeting? Because there's like, I see that like there's 10 people that saw it and like 1 liked it, which is, I mean, it is what it is. Like,
woo!
Yeah, but it's easy enough to throw up a tweet that it's, I mean, it's not a big deal. I'm throwing it up everywhere else anyway.
Yeah, it's just like copy paste across all platforms.
Exactly.
Do.
Well, you have to, right? Or you'd spend your day doing nothing but social media if you didn't do that, right?
Yeah.
So
your interactions will be different on each platform, even if the starting point is the same.
Yeah. Stephen, have you found more? I know you just have recently started to post more to TikTok. How have you found engagement there for your stuff?
I mean, I started doing TikTok seriously, I guess probably like a year and a half ago.
Oh, that's been a year. Okay.
Right before I launched my Cozy Fantasy, because I knew there was an audience on there, and so like I started building that up, and I mean, I think TikTok is totally about the audience you're trying to find. You know, like some genres are really present there, some are not. So, you know, I think you just got to go where your readers are.
Totally.
Yeah, that's a big thing that I've learned, switching genres as well. Like sci-fi, I was pushing Eclipse on TikTok for 2 years, and I don't think I sold more than a couple dozen books because of TikTok. Facebook seems to have more sci-fi readers on it, but my cozy fantasy, like, well, when I started promoting the Bartender Between Worlds on TikTok, those posts just took off, and I tripled my followers in a couple months. Like, just unreal how the difference of genres makes in the platform that you're on.
Yeah, but that can pretty much equate to readership age, I think.
Yeah.
Like most sci-fi readers, I guess if it's like relegated to Facebook, are going to be like 40 plus.
Older people, yeah.
Whereas TikTok and something like cozy fantasy, like that has taken off more in like 18 to 35.
Yeah.
People.
Yeah. Yeah. Facebook is more for Joe and myself. I saw you post about the breakdown group that we're that we're part of.
Joe,
we're not the break-ins, we're the broke-downs.
Breakdowns. When are we meeting for our first breakdowns? Yeah, that hashtag the breakdowns on Facebook. That's But yeah, I'm just like, at this point, I started up my Facebook a little bit more after releasing Mushroom Blues, and I did like a campaign of just like going through people that I'm friends with on Facebook, and just like messaging them, like super shameless. I don't give a shit, and be like, hey, like I released a book. If you're interested, check it out. And
did you get a lot of sales there or no?
Like around like 100 to 120.
Wow.
Yeah.
Your friends are better than mine.
You have more friends than I do.
But it was great. It was like on one hand, a lot of people didn't respond. That's totally okay.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. A lot of people just replied and said like congratulations. And then I had probably about like 50 to 60 people where I like actually reignited really cool conversations with them. Cool. Be like, I haven't talked to you in like, I don't know, like 5, 10, 15 years. And like, here we are, like, how's your life going, man? Like, what you been up to? What are you doing? Where are you living? All that kind of stuff. And it was really cool to be able to have that experience. Like when it comes to marketing, especially with like earlier novels, I think people can just be a little bit more shameless and just see what works. Like most of this is just us throwing shit at a wall and seeing what sticks.
Absolutely.
So like find out what works for you.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't want to do TikTok. Like I don't want to do TikTok because it's just not the kind of content that I enjoy creating. And if I don't enjoy it, then I'm not going to stick around and do that and just force myself through it, you know? Fair. But yeah, there are a lot of different methods.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many avenues. And I mean, it's not like you have a large platform or anything where you get to talk to people every week about your books and promote it, right? So, I mean, you got to find something that works.
Yeah, not like MJ and I just being like, hey, here's my book. Here's my book. And now you'd like listen to your conversation with whichever author you're super fascinated about. Really cool that we actually got to chat with James S.A. Corey recently.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I saw that.
The authors
That's
of
cool.
The Expanse.
Awesome.
So that for me was like, oh shit, you know. I talked to one half, Daniel Abraham, like 2 years ago.
Okay.
But then we had both of them on this time, James.
That's awesome.
Ty Frank and Daniel Abraham. So that for me was like, it's like just super geeking out because I'm like, I love your books and I love your show. And just like.
Yeah, I mean the guest that you get on to SFF is it just blows me away sometimes. So,
all I do is ask, man.
Yeah, which is awesome. Like, I mean, and good for you, and congrats. Like, I mean, that's great. I mean, in that breath, like, I mean, I am always amazed that people say yes to me as well. Like, I think Steven's the only person that has said no. I'm just kidding.
Never gonna let it down. We're just gonna push Steven farther and farther away from ever doing an interview again.
Hopefully not. I hope you do more, Steven. But
but it is great that like there are, I mean, because there are a lot of people. Oh, fuck off, Joe. I started the podcast. But I think it is really cool. Like, even if you're not doing a podcast, like even if you're just an indie author, you'd be surprised at the people who will respond to you. If you reach out for, like, do you want to do an interview on my podcast? Or if you're an author, like, can I ask you a question about X, Y, and Z related to publishing or marketing or what have you? Like, there are so many people who are willing to be like, yeah, like, I can take the time to, respond to a message, or like I had Ryan Cahill and Rob J. Hayes just like do Skype calls with me to like walk me through the basics of self-publishing. And I'm like, thank you guys so fucking much, because I had no idea what I was doing before I decided to get into this.
And if you're going to ask anybody to walk you through getting started, Ryan Cahill is not not a bad choice to go with.
Yeah, I will give him large credit for my success and be like, thank you, Ryan. It's all you, man. But yeah, like, just anyone out there listening, watching, don't be afraid to put yourself out there a little bit. Even though it's a little bit hard sometimes, it's easier if it's just text, I think. Be like, I'm just going to tweet an author who I really respect. You never know if they're going to respond to you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that to me like has been the biggest difference in the last few books that I published from the first few. Is the first few I felt really like I was in a vacuum of my own little world and trying to figure things out, and not really realizing how welcoming the author community is and how willing they are to talk to you and give you advice and help you out. So that's always something that I like to say when people ask me what I've learned over the course of my writing career, is that like just reach out to people and chat with them, and like it's been good. Yeah.
Kyle is inviting y'all to Lit RPG Digital Con.
Okay.
What's the name of it, Kyle? If you can drop that in the live chat. But yeah, I think like most communities, like the SFF community, however niche it gets, I think Lit RPG is kind of its own beast. But, most even communities are so welcoming. I mean, there are assholes here and there, but like those people get they kind of get like siphoned out, regardless.
I mean, even like the cozy fantasy community as well. Like when I reached out to Rebecca Thorne, who's, like I said, was on the podcast this week. I wasn't expecting it. I mean, she just hit the US Today bestseller list. She went on this big book tour, and I was like, well, she's not going to have time for my little podcast, even though it is the greatest podcast in the multiverse. It's still, it's
the greatest smallish.
Yeah. So, but like I've been really impressed by the people who have said yes to come on, even if I have to ask them a couple times.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, speaking of the greatest podcast in the multiverse, now that I've read Bartender Between Worlds, I saw a nice little Easter egg thing at the back. Do you want to? I mean, are you going to tell people about that? Are we going to talk about that?
Yeah, we can talk about that a little bit if you want. So I mentioned already that this was supposed to be a reader magnet. So my next book, which is already up for pre-order, is called The Greatest Pub in the Multiverse. That's the name of that book. And I actually had the book name before the podcast name, believe it or not, because I've been working on this thing for a while. Or at least I had the idea for it for a while, I should say. So what part do you want to talk about, Zach?
What tell us what it is? What is this thing?
Yeah, so The Greatest Pub in the Multiverse is basically the premise is that an individual named James, he learns that he's inherited this bar, and it ends up being a portal to the multiverse, where he's going to set up and have customers come in from various different worlds, and it's going to be just this fun little charming slice of life, kind of like Cheers meets Loki kind of thing, and it's just going to be a fun time. Yeah, I'm still working on it though, so I won't give too much away because a lot is going to change, I'm sure. But yeah, like when I started, when I first had the idea to do a podcast interviewing sci-fi fantasy authors, I was questioning whether I was going to do it, and I had this title for the book already, and I was talking to my wife about starting a podcast, and I was like, am I just insane for doing this because I already have way too much on the go? I don't have time to start a podcast. She's like, no, I think it'd be fun. You could call it The Greatest Podcast in the Multiverse. I was like, Yeah, okay, well, now I have to do it. Like, I don't have a choice. That's the perfect title for my podcast. And so work it into my branding, work it into my infrastructure. And this is going to be, so this multiverse that I've started with, a Bartender Between Worlds, there's going to be, I'm going to have a few cozy stories, but I'm also going to have other genres of stories worked into this multiverse. So I've got an epic fantasy that I've been working on for a couple years that it's going to be tied in. There's Easter eggs to that already in the Bartender Between Worlds. And I have a few other ideas in mind. So it's going to be kind of this like little crossover Easter egg multiverse that I'm working on for the foreseeable future, at least.
Well, you got one customer right there.
Wonderful. Thanks, Nick.
Yeah.
But I love it. I think like shared worlds are so cool and kind of like underappreciated, because people only ever talk about Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere, and it's like, come on, guys, you know. And you know, like like Mushroom Blues kicks off the fungal verse, and I'm like, I just, you know, want to get real fungal up in here with all these books, and I think people really appreciate that sort of like interconnectedness.
Absolutely. And it's fun for the reader that follows you through your writing career, right?
Yeah.
You know, like I just think it's a fun idea. And I think, I mean, Brandon Sanderson gets talked about, I think, just because he's the most well-known one, right? Like the Cosmere is pretty well known, but I mean, there are others out there for sure.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think more authors should do that. It's just
I agree.
It's a fun time, because like I even have Easter eggs in Mushroom Blues that it's like, you know, pointing to other stuff that doesn't even exist yet. But
Yeah,
like,
right. Yeah.
when it is published, then people will be like, oh yeah.
Then we'll be there. Yeah, I'm the same. I definitely have Easter eggs to things that aren't even really ideas yet, but I thought this will be cool. Here's a seed of an idea that hopefully I can build out later in the future, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kyle's asking, have y'all ever wanted to write in different universes?
Each other's universes? I have a hard time relinquishing control like that, but
I mean, we're all indie authors. I think we all have problems with relinquishing control.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Having read some of these guys, books, it would be totally fun to do something fun like that. But man, it's an endeavor, because it definitely would require all sorts of very dedicated communication and going, hey, did I miss something? You've already got, just like Herman was saying, he's got ideas on ideas and little Easter eggs that he's been planting for different books and different series. I've been doing the same thing. I've got like 4 other series in the world of Finlestia already planned. I got a whiteboard that's covered over there with books and, the map of my plan for the next 3 years. It's crazy. You just there's so many things that are already created within it that, I mean, it's an endeavor to do something like that. I think starting something different to co-author, like starting something new to co-author, would be way more fun.
Be better. That would be better, I think.
That's definitely what appeals to me more. Like, I've already been talking to Ronnie about us co-authoring something together.
That'd be cool.
Because like he's really into psychedelics, as am I. So we're like, how can we like combine psychedelics with fantasy? And we're like, let's just roll with this and see where it takes us. But that appeals to me way more than writing in someone else's universe.
Yeah, I would agree.
Because there's such an intimidation factor, just like you said, Zach, with all the stuff that person's planned out, but all the stuff that exists just in their head. It's like I could never penetrate that, like, just sheer volume of world building and like character
and to be able to nail the vibe just right, because I would have to have such an intimate knowledge of everything. Like, Stephen, your books, the Sentence to Troll is connected with A Kobold's Tale, isn't it?
No, they're separate.
They're separate? Okay.
Yeah.
So are any of your series connected?
I mean, my 2 Tales of Adria books, Curse Cocktails and Sword and Thistle, they're standalones within the same epic world.
Right.
And I mean, I have plans for another series that's more epic fantasy set in that world. So then you'll have like cozy on one side and more like grimdark on the other.
Exactly.
And even seeing some of the characters
contrast.
from like different points of view.
Totally. Exactly. And that's exactly it, right? Because Steven's got all these other plans for this cozy world that he's created, but like, how
It's
can
not
we
just
just
cozy,
know
man.
all that? You just can't know that, right?
Yeah.
Like, I just finished this epic fantasy trilogy, like very classic style epic fantasy, but the book I've got coming out in March is a cozy. So like, but it's set in the same world again, like just like Steven, where it's different vibes because it's different perspectives and different parts of the world and life, right? So you just can't know all those intricacies of somebody else's world.
Yeah, that's right. I love that both of you are doing that as well, that you've got these codes, that you've got, you're planning a different subgenre in the same world, as you've got a cozy that you're playing an epic fantasy, and you've got a classic fantasy that you're playing a cozy in. Because I think cozy lends itself well to that, because it's such a slice of life genre that you can just pull out a story of an individual in this world. That who knows what else is going on in the background of this world. That's the epic fantasy tale that you're telling.
Right.
But in the midst of that, you've got this cozy story about, a tavern or somebody who's hunting for a mushroom, or someone, I'm not sure what your cozy is about yet, Zach. I don't know if you want to talk about that one yet, but like
I've seen
whatever's
the cover and it's awesome.
Whatever's happening. Yeah. Like whatever's happening, like individuals are still existing in this world besides the grand epic hero's journey or whatever else is going on in the story, which I think that's so cool.
Yeah. But I think like having a world that is so rich like that it is able to lend itself to different subgenres that is something like that authors, once they realize it, can like really take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Like the Fungal Verse, I'm like, man, I've got, Mushroom Blues and its sequels, which are like police procedural noir, but then I've got my next book and the Spore City and this trilogy, which is like much more cyberpunk. Then I've got plans for standalones. Like one is set during the Spore War, and that one is much more of like a war novel. Then I've got ones that are set hundreds of years in the past, and those are like fungal samurai kind of like epics. So there's just like so much stuff that you can throw together.
Yeah.
And it doesn't just have to be fantasy. Like for me, it's been really nice to not have the constraint of science fiction or fantasy. Like I can kind of mix and match within a single story, but across different books as well.
Do you consider your book fantasy or sci-fi, or like there's speculative fiction, but is there a
forget everything? It's just fungal.
Just fungal punk.
No, it's been really hard. Like in my head, it's more science fiction, but then even then, after it's come out, like people have been labeling it as like urban fantasy, and it definitely falls within sort of urban fantasy sort of brackets. It's like, there's a race of people who can communicate with each other like brain to brain empathically. Like that is pretty fantasy because it doesn't involve technology.
Right.
Maybe the fact that they're like fungal people makes it more fantasy. But yeah, I mean, I've just kind of been like rolling with whatever comes in at this point. So, I mean, I applied for SPFBO and got in. So,
cool.
I guess it is fantasy
enough
fantasy
for that.
But I'm also gonna put it into SPSFC because it's sci-fi enough for that. So
yeah, right. Cool.
Yeah, I think it's I don't know, genre's a very malleable thing.
Absolutely.
At this point. There you go.
Will there be some glorb wine? Nick, that's hilarious. I love that question. If my wife has anything to do with the next book that's planned in that, there may be some glorb wine. She's very vocal about some of the characters that need to come and have their own books in a cozy vibe, especially after the one that I actually have finished. She's definitely like, so are we going to get one about so and so, and are we going to get one about so and so, and are we going to get one? So it's been I'm kind of taking a page out of Steven's book where I've got this whole kind of fantasy, like this cozy fantasy collection of one-offs. So that's kind of the plan on that.
That sounds like a really good like Kickstarter add-on. is like you could just
Let's go.
no, like a bottle of Glorb wine.
A glow, nice. I have to hit up some of my connections in
Your local vineyard
in
connection.
California. I go,
Yeah,
oh
man.
my gosh.
All right, boys. Well, I think we'll start wrapping it up. I wanted to ask each of you about since Herman's putting out Bartender Between Worlds, since that's out today. If you have a cocktail or a drink that you'd like to recommend to everybody. Herman, we'll start with you, of course.
Yeah, start with me. Yeah, so I've been sipping away here actually on an old fashioned, which is kind of my drink of choice. And if you're looking for an old fashioned recipe, you can find one in the Bartender Between Worlds. It's actually a smoked old fashioned recipe, but the smoked part is optional if you don't have the equipment or tools to do so. But yeah, that's my go-to is an old fashioned bourbon.
How many recipes do you have?
There's 3 in the market edition. The special edition has 9, I believe. And yeah, so if you miss the special edition, those recipes will eventually be available separately. But that will be once the Kickstarter is fulfilled and they get those first. Those will be available elsewhere, more than likely.
Behind a paywall. No.
It'll probably end up being a reader magnet of some kind, or published in the next book. So yeah.
Nice. Zach, what about you?
Yeah, I don't have any Glorb wine currently, so I'll have to get with my favorite goblin to have him send me some. But no, I actually been sipping on not sipping, I guess I'm empty now, but on a Beehive honey wheat beer. I don't know if you guys have seen this around. They're getting pretty big now, but Bristol Brewing Company is a local brewery in Colorado Springs, so pretty cool to be able to support local breweries, especially because we live in Colorado and there's like 400 of them in Colorado Springs. So I mean, it's just it's ridiculous.
No, Denver's like a hotspot for.
It's crazy.
What's it called? Like
craft brews.
Craft brewing. That's it.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, Colorado's nuts. We're nuts.
It's like British Columbia too. It's like Vancouver.
Well, Penticton's got the most breweries per capita in Canada.
Wow.
One of our claims to.
There's like
8, I think, but we're smaller city, but we've got like 8 breweries here. But yeah, for 40,000 people, it's quite a bit.
That's significant.
Yeah.
Steve, what about you?
I love a good cocktail. So for my book, Cursed Cocktails, like I took traditional cocktails and kind of morphed them into a fantasy setting. So you have like the Nelderland Mule, which is kind of a play on the Moscow Mule. And you have this one, it's the Pleasant Peasant, which is a play on the Caipirinha. So I just my go-to is probably a margarita, but I mean, I like trying all kinds of different stuff.
Right on, man.
Yeah,
I love dude. You called mine. I love a good Moscow Mule.
Yeah.
I fell in love with it in Berlin, of all places, which isn't Moscow, but it's
Yeah. I love that you can.
It has remnants. It has remnants of that vibe. So yeah, I think Moscow Mule is like it's a really flexible.
Like they have Kentucky mules that you make with bourbon.
Yeah.
There's like one for like every spirit.
Yeah.
I just love the freshness of it. I'm all about like
the lime and the mint.
Yeah. Oh, it's good.
And the copper mug.
That refreshing.
Like a good summer drink, man.
Oh yeah.
All right, gentlemen. Well, thank you so much for doing this with us.
Thank you
everyone
so much.
Yeah, man, absolute pleasure. Thank you for everyone who's been watching, hanging out with us in the live chat. But if y'all just want a last word, just to tell people where they can find you on social media, if you want to promote your latest book, what have you. Herman, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so thank you to everyone who came out, watched the live stream, watching the replay later on. Thank you especially Adrian for hosting, Zach and Steven for coming out and joining me. This has been great. I'm so happy that you guys were here. So please check out the Bartender Between Worlds. It came out today. If you missed the first part of the show here, lots of fun, cozy fantasy. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it on my website, hermansteuernagel.com, or any online retail store. Check it out.
And is the Kickstarter closed?
My Kickstarter is closed. Yes.
Okay. So you missed out on the beautiful
Missed
special.
out on the Kickstarter. So if you want a special edition, I will be running a Kickstarter again for the next book, but probably early next year. So keep an eye out for that. There might be another opportunity to get one for the Bartender Between Worlds.
Nice. Zach, what about you?
There you go. Yeah, if you guys are interested in that old school classic style fantasy, hey, Stone and Sky. It's a
Griffins.
It's old school griffins. We got wyverns. We got Pegasi riding elves. Everybody gets to fly. It's fun.
Everyone gets to fly.
Everyone gets to fly, but
It's like Oprah fantasy.
I know, right? I just thought it would be fun to make everybody fly and have to duke it out in the air. That's just me. I don't know. But if you're into old school fantasy, definitely check it out. If you want free stories, I've got the preludes stories that are absolutely free. You can get them on my website at freefantasyfiction.com. Yeah, super easy, way easier to spell than zsdiamanti.com. So freefantasyfiction.com was the one I had to snag because it was too good. But yeah, you could get 7 free stories about the characters that you meet in the Stone and Sky world. And yeah, the trilogy is complete, so you don't have to wait 17 years like some other mainstream authors. But whatever, no big deal.
Shots fired. Steve, what about you?
So my website is slrowland.com. And then on most social media, I'm SL Rowland author. And so right now, my Kickstarter, if you like special edition books, you can pick up both of these, Sword and Thistle, Curse Cocktails. They have vellum inserts. Like I've got some metal bookmarks that are pretty awesome this time.
They look sweet. Like
yeah,
they look
They
amazing.
look cool. Yeah.
Pretty cool, like book box tiers that you can get all the goodies.
Right on, man. What about on
The
social media?
good stuff.
SL Rowland author on pretty much everything, I think.
And you can go get his books on TikTok as well.
Yep,
That's right.
TikTok.
Do it.
All right, and I'm Adrian M. Gibson. You can go pick up my debut novel, Mushroom Blues. If you're in the mood for fungal punk, noir, police procedural, basically I compare it to True Detective meets Jeff Vandermeer. So if you're into that kind of vibe, then it's perfect for you. You can find me on this channel like every week. You're probably familiar with my face since you're all hanging out here. But you can check out SFF Addicts every Tuesday with my co-host MJ Kuhn and I chatting with different authors, doing interviews and writing masterclasses. And you can catch me on social media pretty much everywhere at Adrian M. Gibson, most active on Twitter, Instagram, and my website, adrianmgibson.com. You can go check out my merch and buy tattoo designs. If you want to get a tattoo, if you want to buy the tattoo design and get it tattooed by an artist near you, that is also an option. And yeah, and if you're at Worldcon in Glasgow, come say hi, shoot me a message and let me know that you're there, or just come say hi to me at the convention itself. But thank you all for watching. Herman, Zach, Steven, thank you so much for hanging out and just talking shop and supporting Herman's book.
Yeah,
It's a
man.
lot of fun. Thank you
Congrats,
guys so much.
Herman.
Thank you so much.
Congrats,
Herman.
man, on the release, dude.
Thank
Pick it up.
you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Bartender
this
Between
guy
Worlds, go get your copy today.
already got
Love
his
it.
physical copy. Yeah, Lou.
Oh man. All right, well thank you everyone for watching. Have a great night.
Thank you all.
And we'll
Have a
see you
good
all
night. Thank you.
soon. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.